Hi everyone, it's Jerry Detweiler here from NAV, and I want to talk about the new EIDL or EIDL grants, how to qualify, and what to do if you don't qualify. So some of you have seen some of our presentations about this program before, and it is confusing. So I want to try to help you understand it and make sure that you understand what you need to do to apply for these really important small business grants. So here's what we're going to cover in this presentation. What are the EIDL grants? Who's eligible? Are they taxed? How do you apply or how do you reapply? What do you do if you don't qualify and what you can do right now? So I want to start off by warning you that the guidance on this is evolving. Right now, what we have is the legislation and previous guidance from the previous round of EIDL grants. The SBA has not put out at this moment, when we're recording live January 6, 2021, they have not put out guidance for the new legislation. So we're basing this on what we understand about this program as well as what we have seen in the legislation. But if it's anything like last time, we'll get some more information, and as we do, we will update our resources. All right, so let's talk about what are these EIDL grants. And I want to try to break this down as simply as I can for you, but there are some nuances here that I want to explain. So originally, back in March of 2020, the CARES Act was passed, March 27, 2020, and it included these grants that are associated with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. The EIDL loan program has been around for years, and it's used in the case of a disaster, often things like tornadoes, floods, and fires. And if there's economic injury to the business maybe isn't physically damaged, but it's economically damaged, a borrower can apply for one of these EIDL loans, which is a low interest rate loan that comes from the Small Business Administration. So the CARES Act then said, hey, we need to get money into the hands of business owners quickly. So we're going to add this $10,000 grant. That's money that doesn't have to be repaid to businesses that qualify and apply for an EIDL loan. So the way it has worked is you apply for the EIDL loan, and then you check a box at the end and it says, I want to be considered for the grant, and then you can get the grant. And that money is deposited separately into your bank account. And then if you get approved for the loan, then you also get the loan and you accept or decline the loan. You don't have to take the loan. You accept or decline it, and that's separate money that has to be repaid. So one question I've gotten about this is, does this new grant, which we'll talk about in a moment, does it turn the loan into a grant? And it does not. If you have an EIDL loan right now, you still have to repay it in full. There's no turning it into a grant. But you might have gotten a grant, and we'll talk about what has happened if you've gotten that in the past. Okay, so that grant was for up to $10,000 in the CARES Act, and then the SBA came out and said, you know what, we're going to give it $1,000 per employee. And a lot of people felt very cheated by that because they thought they were going to get $10,000 and maybe they got $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, etc. That's going to potentially change for some of you in this new round of stimulus funding, so stick with me here. Now, this new stimulus bill creates a new round of funding, and the way I'm going to distinguish it in this presentation, because it's the best I can do right now with what we have, is the new ones are, I'm going to refer to them as the targeted grant, and the old ones I'm going to continue to refer to as the emergency grant. So the emergency grant is the language that was in the original CARES Act back in March 2020. The targeted grant is the language that's in the new legislation. All right, now, when I read the appropriations or the money that Congress has set aside, there appears to be two different buckets, $20 billion for these new targeted grants and $20 billion for the emergency grants. So I think we're running on two tracks here that can converge for some of you. So let me try to explain this. So as with the original CARES Act and this new round, to qualify, you must be a small business. So this is not for big publicly traded companies or large companies with thousands of employees. It is for a small business. And the way the SBA has always defined a small business is using something called size standards. And that's often based on the industry you're in. And for this particular program, they said 500 or fewer employees. And they did open it up to nonprofits, I'm pretty sure. So I know they did for PPP, so I'll double check that. But I'm pretty sure that nonprofits may be eligible as well. They also make this available to someone who is self-employed. So you could be an independent contractor, gig worker. We had lots of Uber drivers who got EIDL grants or loans in the first round. So you don't have to have employees. It could be you, your own business, to still potentially qualify for this. Your business must have been impacted by COVID-19 and you must have been in operation by January 31st, 2020. I am not aware of any changes to that requirement for this new round of targeted EIDL grants. If that changes, we'll update our articles and information to let you know. But as far as I know at this point, this is not for a brand new startup. It's possible the SBA could come out and say, you know what, we're going to change that date because now we're at the end of 2021 and before we weren't, but at least that's the understanding that we have. And then for this new round of targeted grants, what it appears that Congress is trying to do is they're trying to say, hey, we know you didn't all get that $10,000 grant, and we want to help your business if it qualifies, but we're going to be more restrictive this time around. And so to qualify for the full $10,000, that full $10,000 that was in the original CARES Act, you have to have no more than 300 employees. So usually it's 500. Now we're seeing 300. You have to be located in a low-income community and you have to have suffered an economic loss greater than 30%. Now, the way I'm reading this, and I could be wrong because the SBA could come out with their own guidance. They've done that in the past. But the way I'm reading the legislation, I believe that for this full $10,000 targeted grant, that you have to meet these additional qualifications, but that if you never got an EIDL grant, you may still be able to get an original EIDL grant at the $1,000 per employee. We will know more soon when the SBA comes out with additional guidance, and they're required to do that 15 days after the legislation was enacted. That was December 27th. So we'll know more soon, but that's my understanding just reading the legislation. All right, so if you're looking at that targeted grant, so you applied for an EIDL, you're your own business, you got $1,000 for that grant, and you're like, where's the other $9,000 out of that $10,000 I should have gotten? And you want to try to get that the other $9,000, right? Or maybe you didn't get any grant because maybe they ran out of money before your application was processed. Lots of people had that happen where they ran out of money and there was still money for loans, but not for grants. So you're saying, hey, I didn't get my money. So to get that full $10,000, my understanding is that you have to be in the 300 or fewer employees, which I think most of you watching will probably qualify for. You have to be in a low income community. Now, we don't have the SBA's guidance on this yet, but there is a census tool that appears to be helpful to determine this. If I were you, I'd spend a little bit of time with that. I wouldn't worry about it yet because I think the SBA will probably come out with something pretty simple for you to figure out whether where your business is located qualifies. If your business is located from home, I anticipate that your home address would then be the address that would be used to determine whether you're in a low-income community. But if you want to play around with the census tool, we'll certainly link that, and you can certainly give that a try. And then you will have to have a 30% economic loss. Now, I can tell you right now, based on the first round of EIDL, the first round of PPP, the first round of all the stimulus legislation for small business owners, this is going to be tough. This is going to be confusing. It is supposed to be a loss of 30%. During the 8-week period between March 2nd, 2020 and an 8-week period. And then they put it till the end of 2021, which I'm not sure about. It's maybe because this program goes through the end of 2021, maybe that's why they put that. So maybe, if you apply in October of 2021, then you could pick your 8-week period. But then you have to pick an 8-week comparison period. And I understand this is going to be hard for some of you because some of you are qualified just based on your Schedule C net profit. You don't have month-to-month bookkeeping that you use. So I anticipate, this is my guess, but I anticipate the SBA will come out with some guidelines that hopefully will be simpler for those of you who are self-employed or independent contractors or very small businesses where you may not have the month-to-month accounting that you need to calculate this 8-week period. So let's keep our fingers crossed. I think they will, but we'll have to see how they come up with it. And then the SBA will be able to request documentation of this. So we'll know more in a little bit. And I'm going to give you a tip near the end that I think is really, really essential if you're at all thinking that you want this money. So how much can you get? So for the targeted grant, this is the new part of the legislation. It's up to $10,000 minus your previous EIDL grant. So if you got $1,000, you may get another $9,000 in the grant. If you already got the full $10,000 grant, my understanding is you do not get a second one. I could be wrong, but that's the way I read the legislation. I think the intention is to give business owners up to $10,000 total. So I have gotten a lot of questions about this from people who applied and got $10,000 and wonder if they can apply again. I don't think you will be able to, but we'll find out. For a brand new applicant, somebody who did not apply for this program before, then you could be eligible for a grant of up to $10,000. Now, keep in mind, and this is one of the most popular questions I've gotten, is I got turned down. I didn't get any money from the grant. I got turned down for the loan. I got turned down the grant. They ran out of money, whatever. Yes, you may still be eligible for this grant, even if you got turned down. So don't rule it out. The fact that you didn't get anything the first round doesn't necessarily mean you won't get anything this round. I can't guarantee you will, but there is a potential chance that you will be able to get funding this time around. And hopefully it will help some of you who applied and they ran out of money before they could give it to you. Also, another thing I want to point out, and I'm going to talk about applying and reapplying in just a moment, so stick with me, but I want to mention the tax issue because before we had no guidance that the EIDL grants whether they would or would not be taxable. And this legislation says that the EIDL grants are not taxable. Now, normally a small business grant is taxable. Nonprofits and charitable, that may be different, but for small businesses, usually a grant is taxable, but it's not taxable, and you can deduct any business expenses that you spend with that money as long as they're normally deductible expenses. So whatever you spend the money on, if you can write that off on your taxes, you can also write it off. So you're getting this money tax-free and you can write it off. And then the other good part is that they are no longer subtracting this from your PPP loan for forgiveness. So if you also got a Paycheck Protection Program loan, they would subtract your EIDL grant from forgiveness for PPP. So essentially turning that portion of your PPP loan into, or grant or PPP forgivable amount into a loan. So convoluted was not the intention of Congress. This fixes that. It fixes it retroactively. So if you already got your PPP loan forgiven and they subtracted out the EIDL grant, they're going to fix it. The SBA is required to come up with procedures to do that. So that's good news. I do want to emphasize that there are certain ways you can use EIDL grants and EIDL loans. And some are acceptable, some aren't. So these are some of the ways you can use an EIDL grant. We also have an article on the NAV blog that talks about ways you can and cannot use your EIDL loan. And there is some confusion there. For example, you're not allowed to use an EIDL loan to relocate your business. You're not allowed to do it to purchase certain capital expenses like we've had Uber drivers who say, well, can I purchase a new car with it? And it doesn't appear that's an acceptable use of the the proceeds from the loan. So let's make sure that you at least read that, understand it. And then the best advice I can give you is keep track of how you spend that money, because you want to make sure that if the SBA comes back later and says, hey, we want to see whether you spent the money as you were supposed to, you have that. I mean, mainly, I think they're looking for fraud, but it is a good idea for you to really keep good track of how you spend those funds and what the information you use to qualify in case there is an audit of your EIDL loan or grant at a future date. All right, so how do you apply? This is the big question I keep getting. Now with EIDLs, remember, I'm going to go back to this again. In the past, what you did is you apply for the loan, and then you check a box saying, I also want to be considered for the grant. And then the grant would be deposited, usually, well, it's always separately, usually with a notation on the bank deposit, something like EIDG for grant. And it'd be in increments of $1,000. So $1,000 to $10,000 in increments of $1,000. And then you'd also get an offer for a loan if you qualify for the loan. And then if you accept the loan, then that's deposited as loan proceeds and the loan has to be repaid. So you always apply for this through SBA. Always apply for EIDL through the Small Business Administration. They're the only ones who make these loans. You do not have to pay people. You don't pay people to get to the front of the line. There's been scams associated with this. Please don't do that. Now, if you need to pay your accountant to help you get your paperwork ready, that's perfectly fine. And that's acceptable too. Just be careful about scams where people might try to insist that they're with the SBA and they need a fee, or if they're going to give you insurance to make sure you get the loan or something like that. Be very, very skeptical. Now, the first priority for this is going to be for those who didn't get the full $10,000 the first time. And the second is going to be for those who where funding was exhausted. I am not sure where first-time applicants, so you're someone who never applied at all, I'm not sure where you fall into this lineup. This is what the legislation says about the targeted grants. But remember, I said there's two buckets of money here, $20 billion for the targeted and $20 billion that appears to be for the regular emergency grants. So we may see that these are, again, operating on two different tracks. And one thing that this legislation does is it mandates that the SBA has 21 days to give new applicants a decision. Either say you've been approved or here's why you haven't been approved. That's important because there are people who have waited months to find out from the SBA whether or not they were going to get it. And then it's been a big source of confusion. We still have some borrowers who still don't know, who are still in that queue. So if you are going to apply for the first time, never applied for EIDL before, you can apply at sba.gov. But my understanding is you're applying under the current portal, and there will be a new portal opening up, as I'm going to mention in just a moment. All right, now the other question I'm getting is, do I have to reapply? So I already got a loan, or I got a grant, or I got part of the loan, or I am still in the queue and I haven't heard back. Do I reapply for this new targeted grant? Let me give you a couple of suggestions here. First of all, if you reapply, I can tell you based on other feedback we've heard from other business owners, you're going to get a notice from the SBA saying it's a duplicate application. So I do not recommend you reapply at this moment. I recommend you wait until we have the new portal open and we have more instructions. The law says that the SBA has to notify you if you were in that first group of people who applied that you may be eligible for this new grant. And so there will be a notification procedure. If you already got some EIDL money, let's say you got a loan, but you didn't get the full amount or you need more money, or let's say you got turned down for that first loan, but you still need that money, then you can do what's called reconsideration. And that's where you ask the SBA either to reconsider your application or ask them for additional funds. You have up to 6 months for reconsideration from the date of your denial letter from the SBA. And the instructions for that are in there. It's also in our article at nav.com on the blog. instructing you how to apply for reconsideration. So just understand that you have a couple of options there, but I am not recommending at the moment, if you already have an application in the EIDL system, I'm not recommending that you reapply. I know it's hard to wait and, hear what's going to happen, because I know everyone's worried the money is going to go quickly, but we just don't know the procedures yet, and we will know those soon. And we know it's coming very soon because we have seen an email, thanks to one of our Facebook group members. We have seen an email from the SBA that says they will be switching to a new disaster loan assistance portal beginning on January 15th, and they expect it to be completed by January 17th. Now, I expect we will get more guidance from the SBA before that date because of the 15 days baked into the legislation. I expect we'll hear more from the SBA about the procedures in advance of that, but that new portal is coming. And so, again, if you're already in the system, hold tight. If you're not, there's no reason you can't go ahead and apply before that date. I just don't know how much easier it might be if you wait for the new portal. I don't know. Or it could be the new portal gets so slammed and overwhelmed that things get lost. So if you do apply between now and that date, I would encourage you to make sure you keep a record of your loan application number, maybe take some screenshots, keep track of anything you receive from the SBA, because as we've seen in the past with this kind of thing, when they switch to something new, sometimes things get lost in the system, and you want to make sure that at a minimum you have your loan application number so that you can contact the SBA. Now, this is not the only program in town. And I feel like everyone's excited about this one because the word grant, but you also have the option to get a PPP loan, which can be forgiven, which essentially is like a grant. So don't rule out. You can apply for both EIDL and the Paycheck Protection Program PPP loan if you qualify. This is a fully forgivable loan if you spend the money in the right way in the right period of time. And it could complement your EIDL. You could apply for both. And if you get both, hey, that's more money to help your business survive this crisis. So if you sign up for a free NAV account, we'll be matching borrowers to lenders making PPP loans. There's also a new program with a second time PPP loan. For those of you who already got one and looking for more money, you may qualify for that. So make sure that you check that out as well. Now, what if you discover you don't qualify? Let's talk about some of the other programs out there. And then I want to give you some really essential tips for those of you who are chomping at the bit to get one of these EIDL grants. Look into pandemic unemployment. That's been extended until March 14th of 2021. And there's an extra $100 bump for certain people who maybe have W-2 income plus self-employment income, as long as they make $5,000 a month or more from self-employment income. So that may be someone who has a job and on the side, they're an Uber driver, or they have a side, another side gig that they do. They might get that extra $100 on top of the additional $300 in this pandemic unemployment benefits. And then, of course, we have a new Congress, so we might see some more money for pandemic unemployment. We'll see what happens there. We also, if you have an SBA loan that's not PPP or not EIDL, the SBA is going to probably be making your payments for at least 3 months and maybe as long as 8 months. And this can cover new SBA loans as well. So microloans, a 504 loan, SBA 7A loan. This is a great benefit. So if you haven't checked out SBA loans, we have a lot of content on the nav.com blog about SBA loans, and that may be another option for you. There's going to be money through CDFIs and minority development institutions. We have some articles on the NAV blog with links to all the CDFIs in the country. And they're going to have some funding to help minority and low-income small business owners throughout the country. So keep your eye on that, and we will certainly be writing about that as we learn more. The live venues grant is going to be administered through the SBA, and that's going to be available for things like theaters, concert venues, things like that. One tip there, just to keep your eye open, if you fall in that category, you can't get the PPP and that grant, so you need to make a choice. Landlords may benefit through the rental assistance program. So if you have tenants in your property who are having trouble making their payments, make sure that they are aware of the assistance that's available, and they get in line first things to help pay those bills so you can keep your property. And then childcare businesses may be eligible for some $10 billion in allocated assistance. All right, so what can you do right now? The most important thing I can tell you to do right now is to make sure your business bookkeeping is up to date. I had my own business for over a decade. I hated this chore. It was just a thorn in my side all the time. But I'm telling you, this is the most important thing you can do right now, because the information in your business bookkeeping is the information that's going to help you apply, help you qualify for forgiveness. So please, please, please make best friends with your bookkeeper. If you are your own bookkeeper, then you need to set aside some time to get caught up and make sure everything's up to date, that you have documentation so that the minute this opens up, if you qualify, you can apply. You do not have to have a business bank account to qualify for these programs, but some business owners have found it difficult without one. So if you don't have one, we'll be happy to share. We have a very popular article on the NAV blog, business bank accounts you can open online. I would recommend you open a business bank account. Just please talk to your bank, because you may get this large deposit coming in and they don't want to take fraudulent money. So especially if you're a new business, if you've just opened an account, you need to talk to them and say, hey, what do I do to make sure that this money is deposited correctly into my business bank account? And please, 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 if you've been mixing personal and business expenses, just stop, because it's going to make it so much more difficult for you to separate those business expenses and qualify. So you want a business bank account for business expenses only. If you need to pay yourself, you write a check out of that business bank account to yourself. And you can pay yourself with both EIDL and PPP. But keep in mind, with EIDL, you cannot pay yourself bonuses or distributions. It's money for work you do in the business. So you need, even if your business is physically shut down, you want to do other work and just keep track of what you're doing. Maybe you're working on your website, building your social media following, doing some marketing, doing some market research, whatever it may be. You need to pay yourself for activities in the business and not just write yourself a check and call it a day. This aid is designed to help your business survive the coronavirus crisis. A couple other steps you can take right now. Get a free NAV account. It's totally free, doesn't impact your credit scores. nav.com is the website to do that. And once you sign up for your NAV account, then we will alert you as soon as these loans become available. And so as soon as the PPP loans are available, and we're also going to schedule newsletter articles on these. So please, by all means, stay in touch. All right, we've got a few questions that have come in, so let me try to answer this now. So do the banks have all the EIDL information now? I need to get my grant back that I paid back a few months ago. I'm not sure what that question is talking about, because EIDL does not come through a bank. It comes through the SBA. Oh, maybe it's the fact that maybe you had your grant subtracted from PPP, and so that turned it into a loan. In that case, no, the banks do not have those instructions yet from the SBA. That's coming. So we expect that. I think, if I remember right, it was 24 days after enactment for them to come out with the instructions for that. So just hang on. The banks don't want you to have this staying out as a loan either. So I promise you, as soon as they can, get it completely forgiven and not deal with it, they'll be happy to do that. So it's going to happen. All right, another question. I was told that since my grant is pending and I'm on unemployment, I cannot get the grant. Should I cancel the loan to receive the grant? I'm an independent contractor. I am not sure how the SBA would know that you are on unemployment. I haven't seen any questions related to that. So this is a little bit confusing for me. I'd have to have more information. Now, there is just a brief reference in the legislation, the CARES Act, that said that it could impact your ability to get unemployment. So presumably, if you're getting, let's say, unemployment and then you get PPP, you pay yourself with payroll, then you need to notify your state unemployment agency, because that could impact your unemployment, right? Because you're getting paid through your business at that time. EIDL is a little trickier, because EIDL doesn't have to be spent on payroll. It could be spent on things like business rent or your business debt payments or other things like that. And so it isn't necessarily covering your payroll. So it's a little trickier. So unfortunately, because we don't have detailed guidance on how unemployment interacts with PPP and EIDL, what I usually recommend is you have to try to contact your state unemployment agency. I know that's easier said than done, but the states are the ones who administer unemployment and make those decisions. Okay, so we had another question. I was declined the first time around. Do I have to reapply or can I ask for reconsideration? If you applied for EIDL and you were turned down, please ask for reconsideration. Do not reapply unless you talk to the SBA and they say you should. Because I can tell you what will happen is you will get an error message saying that you already have an application and it'll be a duplicate application. And the one thing the SBA is very concerned about is fraud, because there's been a lot of fraud with both the COVID relief loan programs, and it could look like you're potentially filing a fraudulent application. Not saying you are, but it could flag a fraud look. So I would just recommend that you wait. And then the second question, and this is such a good question, I'm so glad you asked this one. There may have been errors. Is there someone who can help me fill out the application? So if you need help filling out the EIDL application, this is for the economic injury disaster loan that you apply for at the SBA's website, contact your local Small Business Development Center or SCORE. Those are SBA resource partners, and they help business owners for free. And they've been doing a tremendous amount of assistance for small business owners with these programs. And they also have regular briefings with the SBA. So they have good contacts and good information because they work with the SBA. So you can go to sba.gov/tools. And then the lower, well, at least on my laptop, on the lower left corner, it says get local assistance. You go there, type in your zip code, and it's going to help you find your local offices. And they can be a great resource for helping you fill out that EIDL application. And there are some accounting professionals also who have some expertise in this and may be able to help you. We got another question here. If we have less than 10 employees, can we get the full $10,000? Good news is you may. I have to say may. I can't say you will, but you may. So under this targeted grant, it's not $1,000 per employee. It's the full $10,000 if you qualify. And it appears that the qualifications are, again, less than 300 employees, the low-income community, and then the 30% economic impact. All right, so I hope you found this helpful. I'm excited to be able to help you, and we'll continue to give us your questions, and we'll try to answer them. All right, stay safe.